Okay. That's it. I'm going to defer to my colleagues for the waiting room, and I'm going to just kind of kick us off. But good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you. I'm Andrea Sobrato with CFPIC, and I just want to recognize a couple of my colleagues here, Laura Kozwicki, Peter Guan, and Juliet, our new CEO, effective in January. This next 90 minutes will give us an opportunity to walk through the recommended updated child welfare managed care MOU template for you to use with your health plans. Sarah Arnquist and Alex Briscoe of Public Works will kick us off by nesting the MOU in some salient guiding principles based on their years of partnership development experience within the health and managed care and social services landscape. And we will get some excellent guidance for applying those principles from CWDA's Diana Boyer and Baljeet Kumdal as they walk us through this updated template with an eye on ways to expand the support continuum for children, youth, and families. And for some quick housekeeping items, you should all have received an email from me with those attachments, the PowerPoint and a couple of versions of the template, and then a primer for you to use with your managed care plans. If you didn't, can you just direct chat me with your email and I will email those things to you? We are recording this and we will post it as well as all those materials on the CFPIC website. We will also follow up by emailing all of you a copy of the recording. We do have a dedicated page on our CFPIC website for all of these health plan meetings, including FAQs and the iterations of the MOU template. Peter, you can drop that. We dropped that link into the chat for our website. And just in case you want to catch up on any prior recordings, we had brown bag meetings. We've had networking meetings with Kaiser and HealthNet and Anthem. And so there's some really good resources on that website. And as you get going, well, actually, before we get going, I wonder if you could all put your names and counties into the chat. That would be great. I am going to turn it over to Sarah. And as I do, I want to invite you all to drop questions into chat as they come to you. That way our presenters will have the best opportunity, I think, in real time to field those questions. And then we'll kind of bank them and periodically pause during this next 90 minutes to pick up some of those questions. At this time, I'd like to turn it on over to Sarah with much appreciation for what's ahead.
All right, can everybody see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me just get it situated and then, okay. All right, Alex, do you want to take it off or get us?
Yeah. You guys, hi, everybody. I just want to begin by saying, if anybody tells you they have this figured, they're selling you something. So if anybody here is thinking, oh, I'm missing out, or I'm behind, or how come the other kids in class did their homework and I didn't, let that go. Like, we are in the middle of a seismic shift in Medicaid. And it's basically about the growing centricity of managed care plans in an attempt to reform the nation's largest Medicaid program. So if you've ever sat around thinking, geez, Medicaid sucks, I got to do something different. Well, the state agreed with you 4 or 5 years ago, and for the very first time, launched this massive change, like an unprecedented change, somewhere in the tens of billions of dollars. So why this matters is that you cannot do it alone. You are a $10 billion entity. Medicaid in California is 140 billion. Just about every young person or family who comes into contact with you was eligible for Medicaid at the time they made contact with your system. The kids in care are guaranteed full scope Medi-Cal eligible, meaning Medicaid must better finance your work for you to succeed, to prevent families from coming in, to reunifying families when they do come in, to treating kids in care. And because managed care plans are essential, you have to reimagine the architecture of your relationship with them. And that's really what this MOU is about. And I will say you want two things from this MOU. You want the structure of your partnership. So I go back, Sarah, one time. And you want a couple things that you identify as really important. And managed care plans don't know nothing about you, so you have to teach them. So bring your generosity of spirit and love and compassion, and do the work of teaching them about your system. So to distill the work, the managed care plans are the center. Behavioral health is changing. It'll pay for things that it has never paid for before, including transitional rent beginning in January. And it'll pay for providers it didn't pay for before, like CHWs and doulas and wellness coaches and peers. We can go on, Sarah. So this moment is an opportunity for you to create a relationship that will improve over time. You didn't come out of your mama's fully formed. This relationship, no matter how tight an MOU you negotiate, will not be what it can become. Like, it's about a relationship over time, over a defined set of priorities across your entire continuum. And this is the part in all of our negotiations with the plans that has been the hardest to hold. When you talk to a managed care plan, they only think about kids with a foster care aid code. They don't know about family maintenance kids. They don't know about your prevention plan. So helping them understand that you have a continuum of care from parents before they come into the system, from parents when they first touch it, to kids in care. So this is like if I spontaneously combust and you take nothing else from us today, I hope you think about this slide, because you're going to see 30 minutes of details of language, but ultimately you as child welfare have to pick the things that matter the most to you. So attune yourself to the architecture of your relationship. How are you going to collaborate over time? And walk in with your things, the things you care about most. And some of these things we've heard are ECM referrals for kids in family maintenance and kids in care. How to leverage the new CHW benefit. How to create a dedicated network of non-specialty mental health services for your families for court-ordered services. And how to connect to these new things that Medi-Cal will pay for that it never paid for before. So just, again, I implore you, look at your system. What is most important to you? What do you want more of for your kids? And go in and focus on that in the negotiation. Thanks. I'm going to pass it off to Andrea and Diana, I think, who are going to walk you through the language of the MOU. And I guess maybe one last comment I'll make. We've been working in 4 major child welfare systems actually negotiating this MOU. And I think it's now past the point where our contribution, like, and now it's a CWDA MOU. It's not like what we initially called a kitchen sink MOU. And I really want to say thank you to Diana and the team at CWDA. Like, we took a shot at everything. We got punched in the face. We did some negotiations, and now we're settling on something that the field can use. Go ahead, Diana.
All right, Andrea, is this the time Wyatt and I share my screen with the MOU?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. So I just want to say, first of all, like, thank you before I go there. Thank you and kudos to Alex and his team, because wow, like, you've just really gotten us started in just such a great place. And I'm just going to kind of move my screens around here. You just gotten us started in such a great place. I agree, like, this is a moment. It's an important moment, and this is why we're taking time, being very deliberate and careful in our approach and in our engagements. We're learning. I think you all are learning as well. Getting punched in the face, so to speak, by the plans. We've heard examples where the plans are now kind of getting together and going, okay, what's up with this kitchen sink MOU and how do we respond as plans together? So kind of they're joining forces and now we're joining forces. So there's some interesting dynamics going on, and that's all fine. Alex said, what are the 2 most important things? And, I will not put words in county's mouths on what those 2 important things are. We're going to go through this MOU. We're going to have some really great discussion questions that are going to be prompted by Sarah and her team. I would maybe make an argument that I think, I would offer 2 important things because of our child welfare population. One is care coordination. And we're investing some time and work with this team, with some others, to try to put together some guidelines for counties on what care coordination would look like, from the point of entry, from the point of selecting the managed care, through actual care coordination, sharing of information and documents, CFT meetings, like the whole gamut. Like, what does that look like for you? Because we know that our families are very sensitive to their involvement in the system and over involvement by multiple systems of care. And so how do we work together, including collaborating with our HIC-PIC-FIC nurses? So care coordination, I would argue, is probably one important aspect of the MOU and the work with your managed care plans. And the second is a whole child, whole family approach to services and supports. And I think this is what Alex and his team so beautifully have put into this MOU, which we retained, which is like, it's not about just caring for the kid. The kid is living in a context of their important adults and their primary caregivers. And our job as a system is to heal those relationships, ensure they are safe relationships for the child so they can grow and thrive. And so most likely the parent or caregiver is going to be in one of these plans as well. And so how are we coordinating those services so that those caregivers are also getting access to services? It may not be ECM or it may be ECM, but certainly there's other plan services like mental health services and other substance use services that can be made available. So that's sort of the context by which I wanted to start. I'm going to do as quick of a walkthrough as I can so we can get to some of the other great discussion items we have planned for you all in this. What we did was we pared back stuff. As Alex said, we want this relationship to work. We do want to see relationships being built and grown over time. So when we updated this, it's labeled in the title kitchen sink. We're going to keep that title. We love it. But we did change some musts to mays. We did pare back a few things. I'm not going to be able to show you because this document doesn't have a comparison from the first kitchen sink MOU to this MOU. So just know that what's highlighted and underlined are changes from the DHCS baseline MOU template. So they're not changes from the last version of the kitchen sink MOU. So that's just an important caveat there. I'll say also that we also made great efforts to get extensive feedback. This is a result of this product is a result of our work with Alex and Sarah and his team, as well as we've run it by various, I will not be naming them, health plans to get a sense of what they liked or didn't like or could live with, and county staff. So your county staff, we had a great group of county staff that gave us some additional input into this. So thank you very much for that time and support on that. Okay, so with that, a lot of these things are a little straightforward, so no need, but striking out some language here. We added a clarification with respect to when we're referring to county, it's county child welfare, not just any other county department. That was a suggestion from your county staff. We added, this is a pretty important change, which is that the activities of the county responsible person shall be completed only to the extent the county has available staff resources. If there's a crisis in your county and you're needing to attend to it, this is frankly not a mandate. We have this language in IHSS, but I want to make sure that in your conversations with the plans you convey that there is still an interest and an earnestness about building our relationship. It doesn't mean that we're going to ditch this as soon as we can. It just means the reality of it, and the plans may not realize it, but county child welfare isn't funded for this work. The plans are funded for this work. We're not. And so we sometimes do have to get pulled aside for disaster response, for example, and other activities. And so it's just an opportunity to let your plans know. And again, just, try to say like, we're still committed to this, but, there could be situations where we have to get pulled away. So we mirror that, language here as well. And we've added two things, a notation around the LTSS liaison and a tribal liaison. And we've put those all plan letters that describe their activities as footnotes. So please do familiarize yourself with those letters. As you know, we have ICWA requirements for meeting active efforts for serving our tribal families and children. And there is a tribal liaison that could be a very good support and for you all, as well as we have children that may need long-term care type services and supports that are very high needs kids. And so those are other individuals that your regular child welfare liaison can coordinate with. We heard that some plans are open to suggesting evergreen agreements or 1-2 year, language for the term of the contract or the MOU. And so really up to you on this, how you want to go on that. It's pretty flexible. Under the MCP obligations, in A, provision of covered services, just added simply other covered services when indicated based on screening findings there, which actually should have been underlined now that I think of it, but that's okay. And not perfect formatting here. Under the child welfare liaison, we did keep the AB 2083 coordination piece. It is recommended that you work with your local county ILTs and MCPs to figure out how best to do this. Partnership Health, there's a few of us counties that were meeting with Partnership Health yesterday, and they have already participated in some 2083 meetings. I think it was at least 6 or 7 counties they listed where they said that we have, we're engaging with the 2083s and they want to do that in all 24 of their counties. Obviously, if they only have 1 or 2 individuals at the plan, they can't go to every meeting every month. And not every ILT is meeting on a monthly basis, which is fine too. So you want to just kind of find ways to be flexible on that. But it would be great system integration work if you were to be able to include them. And we don't recommend updating your 2083 MOU necessarily to integrate the plan. Certainly, we're not going to say no if you want to do that and if that's what your ILT wishes to do, but starting off, just simply getting them connected into those meetings and into the work that's happening locally. Under county obligations, and just a note, I'm going to go ahead and take questions at the very end. I do want to try to get through all of this. We did keep a lot of the care coordination pieces. We pulled up some of the language from the bottom up into this area. Care coordination for the county to ensure training is provided for the MOU to your staff. And we are happy at CWDA with CFPIC's support to help you all in identifying and delivering the training, although a lot of this training is also provided by the plans, but there might be some process type stuff that we might want to augment for those, for that training. Basically, you do also want to just make sure all of your children do receive information on the covered, the EPSDD services that plans are offering, which is now called MCP it's called Medi-Cal for Kids and Teen Services now. So pulled a few of those things from below up here. Under the training and education piece, I think this was a carryover from the first time. We just made that recommendation for the 45 days. Jumping down below, pulled section D up from this optional language. And also, and this is where having the plans give us input, they really wanted us to try to keep this to a may as not a must. So sharing, developing training and education materials, sharing outreach communication materials, and then the county distributing those materials in a timely manner to support the liaison and others. And this is information that if you have it, you would distribute it. If you don't have it, then you wouldn't be distributing anything. On the referral processes, we have language here, again, that we had previously believe is that the MCP liaison and responsible person will collaboratively identify referral pathways for child welfare involved. And I think this is one of the, it's kind of embedded in that care coordination is you have to refer in order to coordinate care. So creating those referral pathways, I think, is one of your a priority I think we'd like to see stay in the MOU. We do retain our recommendation to keep the closed loop referral out of the MOU. There has been no finalized guidance that I am aware of, unless others are, on closed loop. There was draft guidance, and that draft guidance requires the ECM providers and community supports providers to comply with closed loop. We know that there's a lot of issues that still have to be addressed. Those include the fact that the plans are using multiple different platforms. So for a county, your staff could have to also use 2 or 3 platforms. It could be a workload, especially the more platforms that are used. And then there's cost issues. And we've heard that plans have offered to pay for like the first year or 2 of the county use of those platforms, but then haven't said anything beyond that. And then of course, information sharing, like what information can we put forth through those platforms? And wanting to make sure that we're not running afoul of any information sharing requirements that DSS may impose on us. So still, we continue to work with DSS to try to work through some of those issues, but for now, we think it's best to keep closed loop out. On care coordination, we have here that the parties may co-develop guidelines and training. So again, this is a may, and this is in the area of ensuring that members that receive CWS continue to receive those services when they move to a new location or are transitioning out. And so we know we have a lot of kids placed out of county. So this is where we thought it would be good to put here the potential development of some guidelines or training so that when those moves do happen, that we have a plan to ensure that there's no break in services and there's continuity in services. And again, this is where, as counties need some support around this, we're happy to provide that technical assistance. And then let's keep scrolling down. We did add some language to underscore members can include children, transition age youth, but also your parents and your caregivers. I mean, a lot of our families are coming from a Medi-Cal managed care system. When they come into care, they're going to be leaving in a managed care system. Likely to retain that while they're with us, certainly the children, but parents as well. We've also heard that a lot of resource parents, for example, like Kaiser and like their children, foster kids, to also be in their Kaiser plan with them. And so at that point, like we're seeing like all of those that we work with, the parents, caregivers, and youth are touched by a managed care plan that has services it can offer. And that's where the work collaboratively to identify those services supports and make those linkages can be important and can help our staff meet case plan goals and our families meet case plan goals. So underscoring that members can be broad, that behavioral health services can and should necessarily be in that scope. And then what is this MOU about? What is CalAIM about? It's addressing the social determinants of health. So we added that piece as well. In the lower sections here, we retained what was in the original kitchen sink MOU with some modifications, that the MCP will obtain input from you all about what network of community-based providers you utilize to serve families. So for example, you may have a preferred RAP provider, and that RAP provider may have an ECM contract, and sure would be nice to use the same one. Or if a plan is not contracting with the RAP provider that you are using, then that is an opportunity for them to have that partnership. So that's just an example. And we here obligate the county to provide a list of those providers, but clarify that the MCP retains the ultimate responsibility for contracting decisions, because they were seeing this as a potential threat, the MCPs, that we were trying to decide for them who to contract with. So we're saying here, we're not telling you to contract with, but we do want to try to see some alignment here. The next section is ILT. Again, and as a county and local ILT determine, they may collaborate to ensure responsibilities of the MOU are carried out in alignment. Gives you all at the county a little bit of flexibility is why we put that may in there. The parties must collaborate to identify members not receiving the APA Bright Futures screenings. That's pulled up from the below section. It was optional. We made that as part of the MOU. And then sharing guidelines for implementing care coordination across multiple providers, including shared comprehensive point of contacts, et cetera. And this is where the plans want a little flexibility. But we kind of struck a middle ground and said that it was a must, but training and guidelines as opposed to policies and procedures here. So that there's better, coordination of care. So we'll keep going. And there's explanatory comments in almost, I think, every section here of where we've made changes. So if we were to jump down to the care coordination piece, we have added in the MCP's implementation of policies and procedures to track members that are receiving child welfare services. As Alex mentioned, they get all the A codes for all of the populations of focus except for family maintenance cases. And so we added here that the MCP would work with you all on the best way to identify and track children and youth that are served in family maintenance with or without cohort involvement and who are referred to services. So we feel like you're in the best position to make that determination of how best to share that information. In number 1, ensure each member is assessed for medical and behavioral services, which may include conferring with the county on any existing or needed assessments and jointly determine the appropriate pathway for obtaining the information. We're going to be doing a little deeper dive. We have been with some county staff and with Full Circle Health Network, which is an ECM provider, to try to streamline a little bit of this work. Because we know we're collecting assessments and information. They need to collect their do a needs assessment, wanting to make sure that you are working together so we're not over assessing our kids and families and coordinating on that. And you could achieve that through ECM providers often get a release of information and such too, and consents, and we have those as well. And so we may need to use or expand our existing releases of information and consent forms to make this possible. So certainly want to put that plug in to make that as a consideration so that we're, again, not over assessing and we can more freely share information and do case planning. Did add here cans on the requirement that the plans have to ensure that each member's needs are identified. The 3, we kept this language where the plans have to notify group homes, STRTPs, and others when a member is placed outside of their service area. The plans, this was a head scratcher for them because they said, child welfare and STRTPs are going to know before we know, most likely. But it is part of the baseline agreement that's required by DHCS. So we retain this and just added a clarifying sentence that you can co-develop guidelines for how this works. So just added that flexibility for both counties and plans there. Facilitating coordination with the LTSS liaison as appropriate when they're receiving regional center services and with the tribal liaison for youth who are receiving child welfare services. So again, referring back to what was in the definition section and where this applies is right here on care coordination. Now we go into the section for specialty mental health services. The title, I think, by and large is from the first version of the kitchen sink MOU, so nothing changed there. We do add this piece here. The parties will share policies and procedures or guidelines in education for linking parents and or caregivers who are also enrolled members to Medi-Cal reimbursable court-ordered services such as non-specialty mental health services. These guidelines or policies and procedures will also describe coordination around Medi-Cal services that can help prevent entry into child welfare, such as community health workers, community supports, enhanced care management, mental health, and primary care. And again, we put in the comments things that you can use to justify this to the plans when you're meeting with the plans. And what we've stated here is it's an opportunity to remind the plans that your service is not just to the child, but it's to the child in terms of reunification or finding other permanency, which means that we're also supporting families in that process, and those families may also need services. Okay, so now we're in the quarterly meeting section, and added some language about deciding mutually the length and frequency of your quarterly meetings. Providing copies of any updates. This is all from the prior first version of the kitchen sink, so it's not new there. And then agree mutually upon data to be shared and tracked at quarterly meetings. So that's that. Local representation section. The managed care plan, and this again incorporates 2083. The county may invite the MCP to participate in those meetings. Pull that up from this section, but just change the must to a may. For QA, none of this is super different other than we removed some engagement by second visit rates, which was in the first version. We got some feedback that was challenging to include, and then added a paragraph that is consistent with what we did in the IHSS MOU, which is that the QI provisions are intended to encourage the parties to develop and document activities for how they will assess whether the MOU is improving care, coordination, and whole person care, and to develop mechanisms to evaluate that whether the MOU is effective in achieving its goals. Any data required will be contingent upon the availability of such data from CWS CMS or CARES. We added that end sentence is a little more unique to child welfare. And the data sharing and confidentiality, nothing here, nothing here. Clarify that this is quarterly. This section addresses release of information. So if member authorization is required, the parties may agree to a standard consent. So not a must, but a may. That was that plan request to make that a little bit more flexible. We know that it can be very difficult to reach agreement on standard forms if we're involving county council and managed care plan council. And so the worst case scenarios, there's multiple different consent forms that get signed, which isn't great, but we felt like if it was a must, then there could be a barrier to even implementing any of this. So we think the may gives you a little bit more flexibility there. So I think here, oh, okay, we just wanted to make a note here. We did not pull this up because DSS is providing the plans with aid code information, and we're not HIPAA covered. So we're just, again, recommending that we're advising that counties don't need to be signing the business associates agreements. Would love to hear if any county feels otherwise. Our county staff agreed that this, seemed like a good thing to keep out of the MOU for now. There may be a future, I will say that there actually may be a future that's closer than we realized on data sharing. There's a draft, and I'll put it in the chat. There's a draft data sharing framework that's out for public comment. Comments are due December the 9th. There's 3 priority areas that have been identified for data sharing. I don't know if Sarah and your team, know this already, but child welfare is one of the 3 priorities that have been identified. Homelessness is the second one, and I can't remember what the third. Oh, it's pregnant parenting, I think, as the other populations, the other one. So we were surprised by this. Seems like, and this is DSS that is interested in data sharing. and having that applicable with the plans and with other providers for child welfare. So we will be having more conversations on that in the near future. We took out the disaster. That's still a holdover from the first kitchen sink MOU. That is as well. And I want to get to the end of this. I think I'm pretty close. Annual reviews. We added this here, so this is new. Any recommendations for modifications, amendments, updates, or renewals for responsibilities shall be brought forth to the county for consideration and discussion. So wanted to just make sure that there is a trigger. Like if there's an annual review, but there are recommendations for modifications, that you all get a chance, just making it clear that that process will happen. Annual review of the MOU on any, and as necessary, if there's any new guidance issued. So I want to make sure that we're reflecting any changes in the MOU as necessary. And then finally, towards the end, parties may agree to additional data elements, such as, and then this whole section is really optional for you all. So just wanted to make sure you are aware of that. But again, this is part of, a lot of this was in the original, and isn't actually in the baseline too. But we've highlighted it because it's largely May for you all. I think that's why we highlighted it. Now that I think about it, I'll double check that. And apologies. So Baljeet and I did work with a lot of folks on this, and Baljeet was not able to be at the meeting today. So I will try my best to answer questions. I think there's a few questions in the chat. So I don't know, Andrea, if you want to pull those up or.
Yeah, I am not seeing too many questions. Let me just scan it one more time. I think Locke, do you want to come in? You dropped something into chat, and I think you and Sarah interacted just a little bit.
Yeah, Andrea, what aspect do you want me to clarify?
Well, unless there are direct questions to you, Diana, that just you are seeing, I'm not seeing on the general chat any questions.
So with regard to that particular WIC code, it actually precedes LA.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted to go into that. You dropped a comment in that. I'm not sure what that was. I mean, if you were responding to something that was already said, or if there's any questions around that.
It's part of the continuity of care and care coordination, where there's already language in the WIC in which it basically says, you know, if they are part of a medical managed care plan and they go to another county, and the decision was to keep them in that particular plan, then that plan is responsible for payment of out-of-network providers, so to speak. So, so there is some language there that does clarify some of the aspects around care coordination that could be that could give context to some of the language in the MOU.
Great, thank you. And then is there an APL addressing this?
So that was my question, and I tried to search really quickly to see if there was a DHCS all plan letter about that, because when I read that, it's broader than the continuity of care requirements that are in an APL. The continuity of care requirements have, there's time limitation on that. There's also, you know, if they agree on rates and things like that. This is it's broader, it's different. And so I am curious if plans know about that paragraph in the WIC, and if DHCS has interpreted it and sort of given guidance to the plans.
I think like anything else, everyone is catching up, and this language, as I said, preceded a lot of it. And in fact, there's part A, part B, part C as well, which talks about some of the aspects about, you know, who makes the decision. It's usually the social worker, and in coordination with foster parents, for example, can make the decision as to whether or not to keep them in a plan and whatnot. But it is something that we sort of a parallel thinking on specific to the aspect around children who are placed in SJTPs out of county, we've actually been trying to engage with DHCS to give us more formal written guidance, rather than trying to interpret from the law and things of that nature. And as you said, Sarah, this seems much more broad. We're just applying it in this particular case that it could be as a part of care coordination. But as you stated, it's much more broad than that. How much more broad, again, hasn't been clarified by DHCS.
Thank you. And you guys drop questions in the chat. That's great. So Christine asked, beyond a release of information, what legally allows us to share client-specific information with the managed care plans?
So that's a good question. We're working on providing some guidelines to counties based on all the research we're doing, including we're talking with DSS actually. We're doing kind of monthly check-ins with them on CalAIM. So we're more to come on that. The release of information to me seems like the primary vehicle for that, and but I don't know that there's other things, so we'll be looking at that. Of course, there's WIC 827 as well. So that may be some sort of an overlay. We do know that the ECM providers do get signed consents from those that they serve, so that they're able to talk with others and work with others and share information. So I think the question is really, what do we need to do on our end so that we can facilitate that care coordination? So more to come on that. Great question, Christine.
Diana, and Lydia asks, can you give us some further clarification why a business associate agreement is not needed?
Well, child welfare is not a HIPAA covered entity, so that ends up increasing county's liability if you sign a BAA. So then the question becomes, for what purpose and what information is being shared? The plans certainly want to share information with us. And so that's fine, except that, and then they have been indicating, like, if we share information with you, then we want you to sign a BAA. So I would ask the question back of, like, what specific information do you as a plan feel like you need to share with us that we don't get otherwise? Like, for example, we are working with our public health nurses, and they often have access to a lot of health related information, and they are supporting your child welfare workers in meeting the health care needs of our kids. And so there might be other ways that we are already and potentially can continue to share information without having to sign a BAA.
Great. Are there other questions? Feel free to come off mute or drop them into chat.
So there's Diana, there would be a BAA, and then there's also data sharing agreements, which would be different. So are you thinking sort of exploring data sharing agreements that are not a BAA?
I mean, I think so. I think that's a possibility.
Great. John, with the upcoming facilitated discussions with Kaiser already scheduled, can we assume that they are agreeable to the language in the revised MOU? Yeah, what's the status of Kaiser's exposure to this updated template? Do we anticipate Kaiser will want to align MOU language regionally and statewide? So what's the Kaiser landscape?
That meeting is happening with mid-December, I want to say. Yeah.
December 18th.
Let us get through the rest of this presentation, John, and then you will I think some of that will answer your question, but we can't assume they're agreeable. I can't say for sure that they are. So more to come, but we hope we can get there with them.
Any other questions? Hey, Regina, regarding care coordination with SMHS, what are the thoughts around how timely and coordinated services are defined? What if Due to capacity issues, services are not available in a timely fashion. Could alternative mental health services be offered? Good question. The definition of timely and
Specialty mental health services. Well, they have requirements. So our county mental health plans are so the county behavioral health departments are the ones that administer specialty mental, these are non-MCP services, right? So they do have some requirements but I can't remember where exactly they are at. I don't know if Sarah, you remember where they are at. For the county mental health plans, there are new time and distance and other requirements that they have to meet for specialty mental health services.
So what's the question exactly?
Oh, Regina's question is regarding care coordination with specialty mental health services. What are the thoughts around how timely and coordinated services are defined? So this MOU is not imposing requirements on the plans for specialty mental health services. This MOU is about there's non-specialty mental health services that are provided by the plans. There is a piece in here, let's find it, that talks about specialties. So there's already an existing requirement that MCPs and MHPs coordinate.
And Diana, this is Regina. I think you're answering my question. I suppose I was fishing to see if there was like a safety net that the MCP was required to provide. So let's just for mental health services, period, if that's what the child or family needs. And so if those mental health services can't be provided through the specialty mental health plan, is there sort of another level of support that the MCP could or would be obligated to provide?
Diana, do you want to answer that?
You go ahead.
Okay. I wouldn't say that the managed care plan's obligation to provide mental health services is related to the county's capacity, in so much as the plan is obligated to provide outpatient mental health or behavioral health services, being therapy, individual, group, or family, and medication management for anyone with a mild to moderate condition. And so if the parent, for example, has a moderate mental health need, the plan is obligated to provide them access to services within 10 business days for therapy and 15 business days for psychiatry.
Maybe we can, I know we have this somewhere, but we can send that information out to counties so you have it. We've sent it out before, but it's not at my fingertips. So we'll make that a follow-up.
Hey, thank you.
And I'll just keep going on that then.
Yeah, go. I think we can keep going.
I think this is one of the things when you meet with your managed care plans to talk about is how they do provide behavioral health outpatient behavioral health services to their membership. And is there a way to get your parents and kids to the front of that line to get connected to services, right? So your families have time clocks that they are under related to the court dates and things. And so we know access is a challenge everywhere. It just is. But, is there a way that if you need a connection for your kids and families, can you send it to a certain care coordinator at the plan who helps them find services more easily, right? Things like that are things to ask for. And this is possible because Ventura County did this. And so you can ask your colleagues in Ventura County how they set it up with their managed care plan, but that is exactly what they did, where they basically got those they asked their managed care plan to find providers who would specifically see their families And then they effectively got those families to jump the queue and get connected.
Are you referring to the priority access work that they did through the Child Welfare
Exactly.
Council?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's through the managed care plan, or are you referring to the county mental health system too?
I was referring to the managed care plan because
Okay,
with the MOU, you're negotiating with the managed care plan.
okay. Um, the other thing that's happening soon, although probably not super soon, is BH Connect, which is going to be funding county child welfare to do a joint assessment with a specialty mental health services provider once the case is substantiated at an investigation. And so that's another opportunity to like jump the line, if you will, but like start to initiate that process of getting kids the service assessed for the services through the specialty mental health services program. So that's, I think, a really important and very positive change. Now, like for kids that are currently in care or kids that aren't initially assessed and receive those services, but maybe end up needing, starting to need those services, how do you get those timelines expedited and done quickly? I mean, I think that's where in your MOU, there is an opportunity. And this is why it's so important, again, to have that conversation in your 2083 work. Who's doing what and by when? Like, how are we getting kids the services they need on a timely basis? Because that's what prevents the kids from becoming your most difficult to serve. Because they are, falling through the cracks in the meantime. So, I mean, happy to have more focused discussion on that intersection as we need. Do you want to go ahead, Sarah, with the rest?
Sure. All right. So we are going to wrap up with some next steps. Diana, feel free to jump in too. Really summarizing kind of what Diana went through with the MOU. So here, just focus back to your AB 2083 system of care coordination. So some prompts for you to think about within your county is what do you want, what managed care participation should look like with relation to your AB 2083 system of care leadership meetings. Do you want them involved? Do you want them involved, by invitation only? And if there's multiple managed care plans, that obviously requires specific consideration. We have a little bit of time. Does anybody want to share if they've thought about this and sort of have a plan? It's okay if you don't, but.
This is Barbara with Sacramento County. I can tell you that for us, we have landed on a quarterly basis, and that it's an opportunity for them to share data. And we've only met once, and we're scheduled, and there was a lot of like, why we're here, why are we being asked to be here? That was that kind of conversation, a lot of concern that they were going to be asking client specific information when that's not what we were wanting. So we are scheduled to meet in a couple weeks, and we'll see how this second quarterly meeting goes. But the managed care plans, knowing that it was really going to be a surface level data information and conversations having, they were more amenable to that.
And are you doing that meeting, because that's the SOC meeting, are you, with your MOU, it also talks about quarterly meetings? Are you planning to align those or to have them be different?
Yeah, so we've added that language in our MOU draft.
That it will be one and the same?
Yes.
And Barbara, do you have all your plans there together at the same time?
That's our plan, is to have all 4 of them there. I'm not sure what that's going to look like again. We're going to have our second one on in December.
Right. Thanks for sharing, Barbara. Anybody else? Right. Well, there's not very many counties that have more than 4 plans. You're lucky.
Yeah. We
You
may
in
need a
LA and San Diego?
master matrix of 2083 meetings and plans and days and times that people are meeting.
Mhm. All right, so here are some more next steps. So as you work through the MOU, have you received copies of the policies and procedures from health plans? So some health plans have already developed draft policies and procedures and are sharing those. So you can ask if they have them. If you review them, do you have any concerns? And do you feel comfortable moving forward with the MOU based kind of at the status or the stage of those policies and procedures right now? Do you know your main point of contact? Internally, right? Have you identified your person internally to be the main point of contact for the managed care plan, both on a day-to-day basis and then for issue escalation? You have to name somebody in the MOU, so that's a requirement to execute it. But that's an internal decision that you're going to need to make before you can move forward to execute. And then do you know the child welfare liaison? Do you have their contact information? Have you looked up the managed care plan contracted providers for enhanced care management in your county? So they all post their provider directories to their website. And you can pull down and you can just do a Control F to find, right? And search ECM to get to the page. And you can read by population of focus who their ECM contracted providers are. So the question is, do you recognize any of those providers? Are you comfortable with your children getting referred to those providers for ECM? And if not, do you want to start advocating both to your providers and to the plans for those networks to more closely align so that you can refer, when you make referrals for ECM, they're getting connected to providers that know your community and know your population. I will recall a recent experience with a managed care plan that indicated they had enough child and youth providers and were not expanding their ECM network. They had one contracted provider, which was their county, on their provider directory. That was it. And they said they had a closed network. And so this was last week. And so the advocacy here may be important, but by going to their provider directory and actually looking it up and verifying it myself, I was able to reply back and be like, really? You only have one provider. So you can look that up. And are there certain populations that you would like to prioritize for improved coordination? We'll get into this a little bit more, but we've heard from some of you that there are the non-minor dependents or transitional age youth, for example, or your family maintenance population that are for surely enrolled in managed care, most likely. Have you sort of sorted your populations based on where you want to start your focus and concentration? Yes, Regina?
I don't know if other counties would agree, but I think here in Sonoma, we'd be interested in learning about what other counties are doing as far as those different staff assignments, right? So for that person that's in the MOU, is that one type of person, one type of position? And then the person that's there for day-to-day contacts versus issue escalation. Especially back to Diana's point about how, none of this is funded and we're sort of building it into folks' work. I'd be interested in how other counties are structuring that. I'd also be interested in learning if other counties are utilizing their HIC-PIC-FIC teams or other public health nursing teams to, collaborate on this work.
Does anybody want to share?
Maybe it's a little too early.
From a Ventura County perspective, we're in that stage of assessing right now too. So I don't have an answer to offer, but we're curious of the same.
Yeah, this is Barbara with Sacramento County, and I'm learning to see how time consuming this is going to be. So we've been working really closely with Kaiser, doing like a like a pilot project. Like we're doing a PDSA, and we're learning a lot of like I need to check that email inbox more often than I am. What kind of inquiries and questions that might be happening, and just like trying to follow through the referral process because I know our staff are referring directly. We're seeing a lot of hiccups and so then when they loop that in, we have an inbox, this inbox in, which is basically me. Then that's when I can get involved. So yeah, we're also really assessing like how the manpower and that's just one MCP. We have 3 other MCPs that once they get also involved, they don't have as much of the clients because we've determined like with Kaiser, they have over 1,000 of our children. So they are like the bulk. They have the majority of our I guess our youth and children that would qualify. Um, yeah, so right now it's just one person and it's me for Sac County.
Okay. I'll keep going, but feel free to put comments in the chat or ideas. So the next step is around educating managed care plans on your services and populations. And Diana, maybe I'll prompt these questions, then you can pull up your document. Or I'll give you a little time. We've heard that, this is a relationship building activity, but the managed care plans don't really understand what you do. Maybe how you don't understand sort of the inner workings of what they do. And so sharing what you do and educating them, it could be a really important first step where they might have a better sense of where you're coming from. So here are just some prompts, and Diana has a document that is very excellent and breaks this all down into much more detail that she'll share in a minute. Oh, I took out this graph. But I do think also thinking through maybe creating one summary of, here's the populations and listing specifically, if you can think of ideas on things that the managed care plans offer or what they do that's really important to your specific populations and giving them those examples, that also can be very helpful for them. So if you go kind of population by population and say, for medically fragile youth, this is why this is important. But then for non-minor dependents or transitional age youth, they may not be on their radar because you know what? They don't really go to the doctor that often. And so, but what do they need, right? And so where can the managed care plan help? But Diana, did you pull it up?
Unmute here. Okay, so Andrea sent this document out. I thought I'll try to keep this to 2 pages, and I just didn't. But so this is essentially a document that just as you can customize. So you can put your county it's a Word document, so you can click in here and just put your logo right in there. I would take off this red part. You don't have to credit us for putting this together, or if you do, then that's fine too. But intended to really talk about all your core programs and functions, with this highlighted area being where you can add like the number of kids in FM, family reunification, etc. Intended to talk about brief, how you're funded, the fact that you work with, have to work with courts, special populations, so extended foster care, CSEC, medically fragile, tribal youth, probation youth, which actually deserves a little bit of conversation today too, I think, but we'll get back to that. Talking about that, we also do crosswork. HICPIC is here, linkages is here. It's really a nice opportunity to connect the dots and help your plans understand the bigger, broader kind of goal, mission, purpose of your organizations and the child welfare system, with links for additional information if they want, and you can add any additional websites that you find might be helpful for them. Now, we're learning that some of the, like, for example, it seems like you all are interacting more with the child welfare liaisons. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to stop sharing this because you have it. And certainly in your contract negotiations, there are probably others that aren't your child welfare liaisons in those MOU negotiations. But the child welfare liaisons so far that we're meeting seem to have some background in foster care. Like Kaiser and Partnership Health Plan, and see nods, yeah, heads nodding. So I don't know to what extent they are or not educating whoever else is in these negotiations. Like, they have attorneys, they have others. Now, Michelle Boss with DHCS has said, like, I expect, she really wants your county directors to be meeting with the health plan exec in these MOUs. Like, it shouldn't be a county council contracts office to legal counsel contracts office conversation around these MOUs. Do they get involved? Yes. So we recommend, like, making sure though that if they are, to the extent people are involved, like, they need to have this information. It's something that is sort of kind of an easy, and then maybe your child welfare liaison can help broker that conversation and understanding as well internally with their folks. This seems to be a best practice for our 2083 teams as well. What we're hearing in those 2083 teams that are working pretty effectively is every system has taken kind of a meeting to talk about their system, so that there's a grounding in understanding what each of us does, what our mandates are, what our pain points are, and what are some opportunities with that. So just consider this kind of another system where that can happen. And maybe they can do the same thing for you all as well. So anyway, just wanted to, throw that out there. Is there a question on this? I thought I saw something in the chat here. Okay, no, that was just to me. Okay, so anyway, let's keep going. I think we have one more slide.
All right, so 3 things to do next. So Diana, this was your
Yeah.
slide. You want to take
it? So what we want you to do first is when you talk to your managed care plan, use this document that we just gave you and build that common understanding of what we do and why it's important, like, that we coordinate this work together. But we don't want you to share this MOU that we've given to you. Like, don't do that. That is not your first step. Your first step, again, is to go back, and it's that table setting with them. And you could even flip number 1 and 2, because it doesn't really matter, I think. But certainly what we want you to do is make sure internally in your department with your county direct welfare director, your county social services director, anyone that's involved in this MOU, make sure that they are oriented to the MOU and understand why you're asking for certain things. And then once you've done the first 2 things, then you can engage with your plan and talk about and walk through the actual provisions. And we recommend doing this in person. If it's Zoom, then cameras have to be on. You have to start building those relationships, and that has to just be said up front. Like, this is a cameras on meeting. We need to see each other or get to know each other. Use that time to convey that. Those are like the 3 big key. I mean, it's not brain science. You probably would be doing a lot of this anyway, but just want you to know, like, we also would prefer that you don't share the MOU with comments with the plan. Like, that's for you. That's not for them. For them, you just share the clean version that doesn't have any comments. It has highlights, and that's okay, because those are the changes that we're recommending, but not the one with the comments. So I think stop there and see if I see Regina.
Yeah, just a quick question. I get a sense of, like, urgency to sign the MOU from especially one of our partners. Do they have any kind of time frame or requirement that's sort of influencing their paradigm, or not so much?
No, I mean, DHCS wanted these templates to be signed. It may be the case that other county departments are already signing templates, and why are we taking so long, kind of a thing. But DHCS has said, as long as we're working towards it, that they're okay. Like, we have to be in active, engaged conversations with the plans. You will hear it again. The plans will say, well, DHCS wants, they gave us this MOU and they don't want us to change. Or they'll say, well, if we have to do any changes, we have to run it by DHCS. None of that is true. So it is a negotiation. And when that is raised, we are happy to elevate as needed back to DHCS. But I think this is where, as we start meeting, so we had the partnership health plan yesterday meeting with those counties. We're having a Kaiser all county meeting with Kaiser mid-December. So I think the more we start doing that, the better. Do we have any, Andrew, do we have any other meetings planned that are cross county?
No, just Kaiser so far.
Okay. Are there other plans that counties would like your other counties that have that plan to be in those conversations? Like, are there any other ones we should be thinking about? I want to say there's at least like, does Anthem might be one, and HealthNet? So we're happy to make those arrangements. We can reach out to the plans and make that suggestion. Other questions? What do folks think? You have all the materials. What do you think so far? Any reactions on the materials that we resent out to you? Any concerns?
Hey Diana, this is Christine. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So in meeting with our health plans, and you talked about making sure they understand child welfare and who we are. One of the big pieces we've been talking about is the how dependency works, and that a youth who like a county has responsibility for doesn't necessarily live in that county. And so in Stanislaus, we have, I think, even more kids placed in our county than we have in our county. And so, talking with them about creating these MOU and agreements and who the child welfare liaison will be and things like that. I remind them that this is, a certain percentage of the youth that you identify as being a foster youth, because they get all the youth with the aid codes, and they don't see which county has responsibility for that youth, is what they're telling us. So maybe not for today's conversation, but I am concerned about all foster youth that are placed in our county, and I want to make sure that they're getting access to all of the services that they're due. But if we have a youth stay placed from Alameda County in our county, we don't share a health plan with them. How does that work for that youth, if they need care coordination or things like that? Because we have no idea that they're in our county. We have no responsibility for them. But the health plans think that they are, because they have no other information, like that this MOU should be being followed.
Yep, that's thank you for raising that. So that's in our work that we're doing right now. So there's a little team of us that is getting input from your county staff on what if a kid's coming into care? What do we do? If they're our kid, like what if a kid is an existing case? What if they actually come to our hotline and we evaluate out? What if it's a community pathway referral? And what are the decision points, and what do we do like for plan selection, for information sharing, for care coordination, and definitely need one for the out of county kids. And this is where the way I see it potentially happening is that your healthcare nurse is going to know. So we need to know. First step is know what plan they're in or do that enrollment. So, and we had to decide on enrollment. So either they're coming in managed care or they're coming in fee for service and maybe we decide that they're going to go to managed care. Decision is made and then the plan has to be contacted. So most likely it's going to be either your social worker or maybe your HCPCFIC nurse reaches out to the child welfare liaison in that other county to say, hey, you're working with us on this one. We just placed and we want to make sure that we're getting the services to this kid that we need. You're not going to contact Stanislaus County, you're going to contact Contra Costa County because that's Contra Costa County placed the kid. So I think that's how it would need to work, probably through that child welfare liaison. And the other thing is, so for example, if you wanted to refer to ECM services, the guidance will suggest for out-of-county kids is refer to Full Circle Health Network, who then will know who the providers are in all the counties, because this is more for like Contra Costa. They won't know who the Stanislaus County ECM providers are, but Full Circle Network will, assuming they're like a Kaiser kid, because that's who Full Circle Health Network works right now. Full Circle Health Network is trying to develop to get ECM contracts for all with all the plans, but that's still in process. So then, you know, but anyway, but the child welfare liaison will always know who the ECM providers are, or as Sarah noted, you know, and this is more work, but you can, pull up the list on the plan's website and find the provider. But it's easiest and best to refer to the plan if you're referring for services and have, I think, your nurses work across county and across plans. Sarah probably has a lot to add.
I heard something slightly different in that question that I hadn't thought about before from like the plan's perspective is they've got a population that they can identify by aid codes and they have no idea who the placing county is. Right. And so if maybe that's the state level data sharing that needs to happen, Diana, like, because otherwise like manually finding that out, like, because they're just going to call you and you're and they're going to be like, okay, we have this kid who can you help us? And you'll be like, I'm what? And doing one by one
let me just say though that what we don't want to happen is the plans just reaching out to those aid codes and offering ECM.
That's what they do right now, Diana.
Right. And
now in
that's why we have a need for this MOU and a discussion around care coordination.
So their process, and you probably know this and everybody else probably knows this, is that they assign those kids on a list to a provider who then just starts cold calling, right? Or sending a letter or sending a text message. And it's because they're trying to enroll them. And so that's generally what they're doing right now. So you're saying the message is to kind of stop that process.
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking to like just again, Full Circle Health Network, that approach rarely results in any positive outcomes. Most families are like, who are you and what are you offering to me? And yeah, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just I didn't even really consider that. So like, I just told you guys, Kaiser says they have over 1,000 kids. And I said, we've got to narrow down on a population because us doing a data matching, I was just thinking about data matching. Okay, now I realize some of those kids are not even ours. They're some other jurisdiction.
Thought of that.
I didn't even think about that.
Me neither.
And so then what do we do with that information? Do we tell them what jurisdiction? Is that our obligation? Or do we say, sorry, those aren't ours? I mean, I don't know.
Again, just going back to, this is where you really want to be talking. This is the conversation you need to be having with your plans. Like helping them to understand that it is not going to be helpful if they just get an aid code and reach out to these families. Like the families come from a place of distrust with systems. This is something that's a big unknown. Like we can barely explain what ECM and community supports are. to our staff, let alone to our families. And so if they want to see success, success is rooted in coordination between agencies. And so sending the message is not helpful to just do these cold calls. And in fact, it's not going to yield a lot of positive results. And it actually may shoot them in the foot because maybe they would have taken it had they, had we done some more prep work. Ideally, and this is going to Martin, your question, actively referring clients. There's some pros and cons to worker or social workers doing that, or informing, for example, and this is the approach we've talked about with county staff and in the guidance we're preparing. It may be better for example, informing and educating a family around ECM and allowing them to do that outreach if they feel like they need the help. And maybe that informing comes not from your worker, but from a HCPC nurse. And it's conveyed as a, hey, this is part of your, Medi-Cal benefits. This is part of a healthcare approach. It's not us. But if you want some additional supports, for example, to access food benefits, transportation, etc., dental care and other stuff, like there might be someone that can help you here. And we can, if you want to connect with them, you can make that call, or we can make it for you if you want. Doesn't answer, Martin, your question about how to refer without data sharing. I don't know that you need data sharing is a little bit different. But you may need a consent to release information. Like if you're sharing information that this is, I'm a social worker and I'm serving a child welfare client, then probably not, you need permission. But otherwise, if it's, and this is why it's like the benefit to have the family self-refer, because then they're kind of on board from the start. I know Hannah and others, I know we've been talking about this in our other work group, if anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, our nurses have been making a lot of the referrals to ECM because they're already engaged with the families for whatever, getting their first medical appointment or whatever it is, and they're the ones that are doing a lot of the referrals. But health services is one of our ECM providers, so it's a little bit intertwined there.
Yeah, I can see how the nurses could be very helpful in this. I was talking to a colleague who does resource parent training in LA County, and she let me know that they're, at this point, maybe because I don't think they're caught up in a lot of this information, they're been advising parents for years to not go on a managed care plan, to get the fee for service, because they're going to be able to get more services more timely, and especially if they live in like Lancaster and they're far away from the previous managed care plan. And so maybe there could be some connection between the nurses and the resource parent training too, to help them get caught up on a lot of this.
That's a really good addition. Sarah?
I feel like my brain is blown a little bit by the data sharing thing that we just discussed. Because I think like the whole exhibit around data sharing, how is if the managed care plan is going to share population level information back to the county, how are you going to make sure they're only sharing your kids in your county?
So this is Christine and Stanislaus. That was one of our original things we started talking about, because their original plan was to send us the entire list of whatever that 8 code is for our county. And that started that conversation. And that's why I asked them to like go back and research to say, like, are you sure you don't know which, you don't get like a county code or something where the child lives? So that's when they confirmed it. We have 3 health plans. So 2 of the health plans are now contracting with a third party. So they're expecting us to send our information. So family maintenance, kids in foster care, all those populations. And then this third party will do the data matching, so that then we would only get the information that that matches the information we send them.
That makes, I get that. Okay. So that's how must be Anthem and HealthNet who are doing that?
HealthNet and Health Plan of San Joaquin.
Okay.
I actually think this is Twyla from Placer. I think Kaiser has been talking about this too, because I'm trying to get my brain straight, because on the behavioral health side, they've been really pressuring to do that with the hospital matchup with Unitas. And that's something that is, you know, that kind of a data matching sort of thing. And the deal, if I remember, and again, forgive me if I'm a little bit off, is like they'll pay for 2 years of it for us, they'll front load it, and then we still have to pay for it afterwards. And so we've been just like going, whoa, wait, we didn't like this a long time ago, and we surely don't necessarily like it now, especially with no money other than them trying to get us to sign with the 2-year agreement. So I'm seeing some nodding heads. So I haven't totally gotten delusional in the last little period of time, and that's what you're hearing too. So, and I feel really pressured sometimes, because behavioral health is kind of going, well, yeah, which is us too, you know, kind of going, well, do we need to do this? Do we have to do this? And then we're going, but wait a second, what happens after those 2 years?
Yeah, I just met with Kaiser's closed loop referral process, and we did a demo from Unitas, and I have some familiarity with it. They were trying to sell our agency on Unitas a few years back as well, and I think we did a small pilot but didn't have any long-term agreements with them. So, but essentially and they did say 2 years is they'll cover the licenses for 2 years, and then yes, it would be on the county to accept the cost there going forward. The other challenge we have locally in Ventura County is we're actually in the process of standing up a community information exchange, which is essentially the exact same thing as the Unitas platform. So then you're talking 2 duplicative platforms, and our 2 managed care plans are going to be they're each going to be using their own, right? And so then that becomes a whole nother challenge. So I think we're in the same boat.
The data piece is definitely tricky, and clearly a lot to still work through on that. Well, it's 2:30, so I'll turn it back over to Andrea.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We will reach back out with the recording and with all the materials once again, and then keep our ears open. Some of these topics should probably.
Hello.
I'm sorry. Some of these topics should probably make a brown bag. I think we're going to think about launching, starting in January, a monthly topical, just bring like one issue at a time and just sort of like talk it all the way through. And we'll know ahead of time what that topic is. And we'll bring counties who have worked it out. We'll bring the right people, maybe outside of this group, maybe people from health plans or whatnot, DHCS. Just, you know, the topic would sort of guide who would be there. But I think that this would be a great topic, the data sharing. I think we're going to start off with path cited in January to look at sort of access of dollars while they're available to help counties stand up capacity for ECM referrals. But I think the data sharing would be a close second if we work some of these things out. And so, Christine, I'm going to reach out to you and see if I can take a peek at your data consent agreements that you have with that third party. I don't know if that's allowed, but I'd like to know sort of what the mechanics are and how those got put into place. So I'll come your way. But you guys, thank you so much. If there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to Diana, Sarah, Baljeet, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.